Hello, my name is Kamala Zulfagari, and I am Executive Director of Street Grace. Prior to being at Street Grace, I was the state's Chief Human Trafficking Prosecutor, and maybe more importantly, I'm a mother. So in this video, we'll be discussing sex trafficking and the commercial sexual exploitation of children. Trafficking is all about the commodification of the vulnerable. Traffickers see it as a supply and demand issue, and the supply is our vulnerable, our children. The demand that fuels trafficking is those who would purchase our children for sex. Exploiters treat our children as a renewable resource. They know that they could sell those drugs or that gun one time, but they can sell that child over and over again, multiple times a night. So let's start by making sure we understand what we're talking about. What is trafficking? Trafficking broadly is both sex trafficking and labor trafficking. But what we're talking about today is sex trafficking. And the sex trafficking of an adult is commercial sex, sex in exchange for something of value that is compelled by force, fraud, or coercion. But child sex trafficking, also known as CSEC, or the commercial sexual exploitation of children, is any time we have sexual activity where something of value is given or promised, given directly to that child, or given to a third party or third person. So a child who has sex in exchange for a place to stay, money, food, clothing, is a CSEC victim or a child sex trafficking victim. It's important to remember that a child under 18 cannot consent to rent a car, cannot consent to rent a hotel room. They also cannot enter an agreement to sell their body in exchange for something of value. Trafficking is a huge problem. It is estimated to be an $150 billion industry worldwide, $99 billion of which comes from sex trafficking. Trafficking very often looks like luring and enticing. We think it's going to look like kidnapping, but that is the extreme exception to the rule. Traffickers aren't going to kidnap your child. They're going to lure them. They're going to entice them. They're probably going to contact them online and befriend them. And that is how they find the vulnerable that they wish to exploit. The online enticement of children increased between 2019 and 2020 by 97.5%. That online enticement very often leads to trafficking. So we have to remember that boys are at risk as well as girls. Boys are more likely to be trafficked and exploited to meet their basic needs like food, clothing, shelter. When girls are trafficked, they are more likely to be trafficked to meet their just as real emotional needs: love, safety, security. There are many vulnerabilities that traffickers will exploit. Some of the vulnerabilities, such as homelessness, involvement in the foster care system, they exploit those who have been previously sexually abused. Already in their history, somebody has taught them that their value and their worth and their lovability is connected to their body. But another vulnerability that is used is technology. That same technology that is allowing us to be here together today. Technology is one of the biggest changes that have happened to trafficking in the last year. Traffickers, rather than seeking out a vulnerable person, maybe hanging around the juvenile court or at the mall during school hours or out late at night after curfew, they now cast a wide net, sending messages to maybe some 50 or 100 people online, looking for somebody who is facing a crisis, who is vulnerable at that moment. And because of that change, really a wider range of our children are vulnerable to being trafficked. The costs associated with CSEC on a personal and societal level are staggering. Due to the abuse related to child sexual exploitation, many of those victimized experience severe physical, emotional, and psychological trauma. That is why we must work to stop trafficking before it happens. We must work to protect our children before they are exploited. Thank you so much for taking the time to educate yourself on this difficult issue. We are here to walk through this difficult subject matter with you, teaching you how to protect the children in your lives. Please join us for the next 2 parts of this 3-part video series, where we're going to talk about online and social media safety, as well as how to best communicate this with your children. Thank you.